Everybody wants to build a storage facility, and it is not that hard. I've done it, and I'm a full-time mom, and I'm a full-time business owner, and whatever. Like, it's just like, how many excuses do you have? You have to keep going.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome. Promise you'll get a laugh. Hopefully you will get a little knowledge out of this podcast. I'm sure you will as well. And if you're tuning in as a regular subscriber, viewer, follower, we certainly appreciate the support, and we'll make sure we give it 100% today. What's up with you, Ian? And we can bring on our new guest here in a second as well.
Well, I'm going to bore the audience and or make them upset, depending where you live. But there was some snow flurries going around today. And I don't know, man. It's getting cold out. We're recording this episode a little bit before Christmas. And it's getting cold out. But the good news is 10-year treasuries look like they're starting to retract in a little bit. That's exciting news. Some stability in the marketplace. Again, more exciting news. And threats of the Fed actually cutting rates several times over the next year. Hopefully it's not politics related, and it's a sign that they want to make the economy back to what we're used to. So other than that, I got nothing. How about, and it's my beautiful wife's birthday. Give her a shout out, Christine. Happy birthday. It's her 40th.
Do we have any happy birthday? Do we have any happy birthday music on this podcast?
I should have told you so you could cue it up and make it fun. But either way, happy birthday. Love you.
We'll give her this.
Yeah, there we go. A little DJ rock party. But with that being said, not to skip past my wife, but I think we should just bring our today's guest in. I'm excited. We have Katherine D'Agostino from Storage Ninjas coming on. She's done everything from planning punk rock shows to having an advertising company to doing what she does today in self-storage feasibility studies, an owner-operator, a ninja, I guess we can say. And I would like to welcome Katherine to the show. What's up, Katherine?
What's up, Ian and Jason? What's up?
Well, I don't think we know anyone from Nebraska besides you. So I think that's the most important part of this conversation. So welcome.
I always say I'm everybody's best friend in Nebraska because I'm their only friend in Nebraska.
It happens. It's one of those states that there's not many people out there, but
just me and Warren Buffett, baby.
Yeah, well, there you go. Those billionaires.
I was going to say the two most successful people in Nebraska. Why don't we start by just giving us a quick background about yourself, Katherine?
Okay. Well, I'm Katherine D'Agostino. You can call me Sensei if you want.
Okay.
My company is called Self-Storage Ninjas. So I'm a feasibility consultant for the storage industry. All I do is storage. So all I do is self-storage, boat and RV storage, and I recently expanded into flex warehouse, like light industrial. And I also have developed 2 self-storage facilities myself here in Nebraska, and I own a 3rd facility here in Nebraska, and I bought one of my clients' facilities in Fort Worth, Texas, a boat and RV storage facility, and I just acquired another facility with my partner in Oglesby, Illinois, that is 95,000 square feet of boat and RV too. So I'm right out there with people developing and running facilities, and I love storage, so that's my jam.
So explain to me and all the novice people out there exactly what a feasibility study does and what does it look for and who needs a feasibility study.
Well, so what a feasibility study does is it determines if the market can support more storage, or if you're acquiring a facility that is not yet stabilized for whatever reason, either it's been poorly managed or it's just opened and you're buying it at certificate of occupancy, you would have a feasibility study done to make sure the market will support your facility and get you the returns that you need. So if you're developing a feasibility study will also look for gaps in the marketplace and tell you what type of storage is most undersupplied and most needed, and also, most importantly, what type of storage will produce the highest return.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And I guess here's the $1 million question, because Jason was just asking me before we hopped on. He's like, "Oh, you get feasibility stuff for your purchases?" And I'm like, "No, because they're existing." And I think it's blatantly obvious that if you're building something, you should most likely consult for a feasibility study. Sometimes banks require them. I know you're in the business of selling feasibility studies, but what's your thought process on buying an existing facility with zero expansion potential, on getting a feasibility study on something along those lines?
As long as it's stabilized, you don't need one. But, you know, the only times I've said people need one are like, for example, I did a feasibility study for someone where they wanted to acquire a facility that was only full with students from April to September, and the rest of the year it dropped below 60% occupancy. So at the asking price, the facility would not even break even. So that client wanted to know, would this market support the facility at 85% occupancy year round? And unfortunately, in that case, I had to say no. But, so you do have to look at it as it might be the best money you ever spent to avoid losing millions of dollars. But
yeah, I mean, it's a good like insurance measure, like have someone back up your underwriting. And I guess that's like, let's talk about the feasibility study. Like, what's coming in that? I mean, you kind of just outlaid like, hey, there's a financial component to it, but what other key factors are inside this feasibility study to help someone get over the hump of purchasing and or building a facility?
Well, like you said, if you're purchasing a facility, 99% of the time you don't need a feasibility study, right? So, but if you're developing or expanding a facility, most consultants, we all pretty much do two types of studies. So you can either start with a phase 1 study, and the purpose of a phase 1 study is to survey all of the competition and see what the existing supply is, what the prices are, try and get as much vacancy information and such that you can. And then you assess the 3 types of consumers of storage, which would be the permanent population, the seasonal population, and the business population, and see what types of storage they want. Like, do they want climate control? Do they want both? And then you look to see, given your budget, given the client's budget, what is the best type of storage to develop, assuming the market is undersupplied, and what are the returns. So, like at that point, at the end of a phase 1 study, your consultant should definitely tell you strongly, like, I recommend proceeding or I don't recommend. Like, you really don't want a feasibility study that says, well, maybe. So, and then, what's often at the end of a study, like if an area is undersupplied and your consultant says, like if I said, hey, Ian, this project, it looks to me like your 10-year internal rate of return, or IRR, is going to be 33%, you'd be like, okay, I'll take that all day long. Let's keep going. But if I said, looks to me like your 10-year return is going to be 8%, then you'd probably say, that's too risky. I'm not going to develop. So that's what happens at the end of a phase 1.
So real quick, let me back up before that, related to not needing one, or most of the time not needing one on purchasing an existing building. And I know that we talked earlier, and you're focused on the self-storage and boat, RV, not necessarily on multifamily and then some flex stuff, and not necessarily on larger multifamily or other office or other types of commercial assets. But what about if somebody's buying a facility, a self-storage facility, and they're not sure if they're getting top market rents. Like, would they use a feasibility study to determine, like, not the highest and best use, that's not the right term, but being able to determine if, hey, I'm getting whatever, $60 or whatever, a certain amount per square foot or a certain amount per unit, to know if they could potentially up rents and collect more? Like, is that a need for that or no?
Well, you could, right? You could. I would say most people don't. I know that Bob Copper and his firm offer acquisition audits. And in that case, and there's probably other consultants other than him that do. I just know for sure he does, and that's who I usually send people to when they want something like that. Yeah, so in that case, your consultant would sort of just pretty much do the same thing, survey the competition, but they're also in an acquisition audit looking at other things like looking at the facility to see what repairs need to be made or what improvements in management need to be made and that sort of thing. So you could do that, or, that could just be part of your due diligence when you're surveying the competition to see what their prices are. And you can use resources like Radius or StoreTrack to look at historical data and see, what have the averages in the market been over the last year, assuming that data is in there. They don't always have all facilities, right? So yeah, you can either hire somebody like that or do it yourself.
Yeah, and I'd say Radius has got decent data. StoreTrack, I'm not as familiar with, but our pricing software utilizes that, and we seem to have pretty decent data there. One thing that's come up across a few operators that I know, and I just want to kind of hit the pause button before we continue down the feasibility study route. My favorite thing in the world is I got this deal. All the competition's full. I looked and I'm like, dude, nobody, first off, nobody really knows. People run specials all the time, whether they're full or not. In your feasibility studies or your due diligence on the properties that you're buying, how are you vetting what other stores in the area are doing? Because I feel like that's the miss, like the big miss. Everyone's like, oh, they're full because they're not running specials. Well, that's not true, because some people just suck. And then the other side of that is some people always run specials, like the REITs. Because I'll tell you right now, guys, like over 85%, I still run 30% off the first month just to get someone in the door. So yeah. How you been vetting that challenge there? And I've even talked to brokers about this. They're like, that's the hardest part of our job, trying to vet what rates are in the area, because the REITs play so many games with pricing. It's a big misunderstanding in the market. For sure.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, it just all comes down to like old-fashioned research. Both, in a remote study, we're doing all of that over the phone. So I spoke about this at Inside Self-Storage like 4 or 5 years ago. And if you go on their website, I also have an article about questions that you can ask and how to do this, how to like get all of the information out of a facility. So I can send you that link so you can put it in the show notes. But so what you should do is you should just pretend that you want to rent a unit, and you might have to call multiple times, and you might have to have, like your husband call, or, like I will have my assistants call, we'll call multiple times but what you want to do, just to if you want to crash course on this really quick, I would first say, this is something that when I got my MBA, one of my professors, my marketing professor, said, there is nothing unethical about doing competitive research as long as you're not trying to find any data that they wouldn't be telling customers anyway. So anybody out there who feels bad about this, don't feel bad about it. They should be doing it to you. Coke does this to Pepsi. Pepsi does this to Coke. Okay. So you just pretend that you want to rent a unit, okay? And you would say, my thing is, I always say, I need to rent a unit for my parents because they're moving and they want to rent. I always say something very generic, like a medium unit and a large unit. And then I get them to tell me, they'll be like, what size? So then I just have to pretend like I'm dumb and be like, I don't know, what sizes do you have? And then you have to stay on the phone with them for a long time and ask them 36 questions. And you, at the end of it, you know, even if they don't, like if there's unit sizes they don't have, like they maybe say, well, we have a 10 by 15, but we don't have any of those left. And then I'll say something like, well, you know, can you tell me what they usually run for so I know if that's what we want to get? And I'll say, can I be on a wait list? Like once you volunteer to give your information, they don't really think that you're secret shopping them, because why would you give them your information? So you better be ready with your story. You better be ready with your phone number and what email you want to use. Like obviously I'm not using my feasibility email. So, and then, you know, you just have to call back multiple times. So it's going to be hard. Like if a facility is still in lease up, it could be very difficult to find out how many 5x5s or 5x10s they have, because maybe they have, if it's a 100,000 square foot facility, maybe they have like 200. They're not going to want to tell you they have 200, you know. One thing I learned, this is something I learned from Fernando Angelucci. If you guys, I think Ian, you know him. What they do is they will call a facility and they'll say, hey, we're with whatever, you know, Ninja Moving, and we're thinking about entering your market. And we have found that we do best in markets where the storage facilities are at 95% or better, or 85% or higher. So, you know, you want to tell them some other things first before you just ask that flat out like that. But after you've asked them a few questions, then ask that and see if they tell you. They might just tell you they're at 91% or at 89%, or they might just tell you. But, you know, like if you live there, it's going to be easier for facilities that have an office, because you can just go in and you can just be like your grandpa. Be like, I'm going to stay here all day and I'm going to chit chat with you, and, you know, like just be friendly, and people want to help you. So
yeah, I would say most of the time that's true, especially depending where you are working or operating, that people want to help. And you know, I immediately think like, dude, just get out of my office. Like, yeah, but most people, they just want someone to talk to. You know, they might be slow, they might not have much going on. I remember one time I called a facility in middle of nowhere, Adirondacks, New York, and they're like, "You're calling from a PA number," and I said, "Yeah, my in-laws have." Thank God their cabin was like an hour from there, but on the way home, and I was like, "Yeah, they just want to keep their snowmobiles there so they can hit Old Forge." And they're like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense."
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
but you got to come up, you got to be crafty. So
right.
I definitely get
like
that.
my assistants, they will say, like, my husband is transferring there, right? So that's going to explain their out of area number. And they will look up ahead of time and say, he's working for whatever, you know, Delta Faucets or whatever local company there is. So you need your backstory.
Yeah. We've done contractor stuff too, because like when I'm like, oh, Ian at Equity Warehouse, are like, what's that? And I'm like, yeah, we're a construction company. We do stuff nationwide. We're sending a crew out there. We want to make sure we can keep our trucks and figure out the big units. So yeah, it all makes sense. I guess that's the shiftiest part of this whole game, is trying to secret shop other people. And there are companies out there that secret shop. So
yeah,
it's good.
It's not unethical.
Good advice of being a secret shopper, no matter what. Not even just for this industry, but any industry, you can be an expert secret shopper now. So what's up with the word self-storage ninjas and being a sensei? What's the backstory on that?
Well, the backstory on it is a couple things. So, like we were talking about, my background is in marketing. So I firmly believe that your brand better have a personality, right? Like, no offense to affordable storage, but there isn't affordable storage in every city. I think I was in Columbia, North Carolina, and there were 3 different independent companies called affordable storage. Okay.
Yep.
So, and then what's up with how I came up with that is I have boys. They used to be in karate, and like when you're brainstorming, you just come up with like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We were just joking, So, but yeah, I think anything that you can give a personality to, like I love Monster Storage. They have multiple facilities, and they have a really cute monster logo. It's great.
Yeah, you got I know I think it's Aloha Storage out in Hawaii. They're like they branded really well to themselves. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. Actually, it was funny. Jason and I just did a video on building brands and the importance of brands at every level of your business, whether it's being an investor, it's a vendor, even your storage brand, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
It's very important.
Yeah, our facility that we acquired in Oglesby, it's Boat and RV, and my husband came up with the name Bon Voyage Storage, right? So we, every email we send to tenants, we say ahoy. I sign them Captain Catherine. Like we just sent out mailers that said come aboard. I mean, is it cheesy? Yes, it's cheesy. But it's memorable. So
yeah, I was gonna say, how many people are like, oh my god, this lady that owns this facility is nuts, but it's probably paying off. I mean, there's my nuts branding for those of you that are watching it. Someone who had worked for us for a little bit, she said, you need a mascot. I'm like, that goes against everything I believe in, but it's memorable, right?
For sure. Yeah, it has to have a personality. Otherwise you're just like affordable storage, those poor people.
Yeah. Yep. It's
even if it's goofy.
Yeah. Well,
no, but go ahead.
I was going to say I have a client, SYS Storage in Brighton outside Ann Arbor, and so that guy, he is a pastor. Bob Fuchs is his name, and his company, SYS. Can I swear on this podcast?
Oh yeah, let it rip.
Okay. So it's store your shit, right?
Yeah.
And I tried so hard because he knew what he wanted to call his company. And when I do a full study, I do like your marketing plan. I was like, own it, like put store your and then SH*T or just S**T. And he didn't want to do it, which fine, I understand and everything, but like honestly, if people are offended, they're not going to be your customer anyway. But if you were, you can see his buildings from the interstate. If you were driving by and it said store your S**T, you would laugh every time.
Everybody would remember it.
You would remember it, so.
I could just see a big yellow sign with black letters that says store your SH*T ! Like, yeah. I got to admit, we were going to be, I think I talked to Jason about this. I was like, let's just make it LFG storage. Everyone's like, for what? I'm like, yeah, it's looking for good storage or fill in the blank, right? Because if you're trying to get a younger demo to rent from you, it's like that's relevant to college kids. It's relevant to the younger demo that's willing to rent online. So what if you offend the older people? I don't want to deal with checks and cash and all the BS. I want to resonate with people who resonate with what we resonate with,
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I always feel like I send my emails, Honorable Ian, Deep Bow Catherine, like, if you think that's weird and you think I'm goofy, then just don't be my customer because I am weird and goofy.
No, I mean, it's important to niche down and understand who your people are and follow your culture. I think that I think
embrace your brand. Yeah.
Yeah. The people that will not be attracted aren't your target clients, and the ones that will go all in with you because of that. So, okay. So that's the phase 1 study. We talked about that for a little bit. What's the approximate range of costs and timelines for something like that?
So that takes a week. There are some feasibility consultants that can do that in a day. One bank that I work with said they got a feasibility study back from a consultant in 3 hours. So, but I would say if your consultant does it in 3 hours, then it's probably not worth very much.
Sure.
So generally, I would say on the low end, that's going to be about $2,800. On the high end, $6,500. I charge $3,600. Most consultants will put the fee from that toward your full study. And so, and you should do that. Like, what you should do is first you would find the parcel, then you would make sure the zoning is right. Then you would call the municipality, see if anything else is being built close by, while you're making sure the zoning is right. And do any other competitive research, due diligence you want to do, put it under contract, and then you would do your feasibility study before you do anybody else. Like, your feasibility study should be the basis of your development. And then if your phase 1 study says green light and you decide to keep going, at that point you could engage your engineers to do the geographical and topographical, and at the same time, because that's going to take at least a month, at the same time you would do your full study. And the full study, that's going to be the things that you need for your site plan design in terms of unit mix and phasing recommendations, and then the things that you need for the bank or investors, or just like, a lot of experienced builders, they just want to know, they just want an independent person to look at the whole deal, right? So that's going to have your lease up projections by month for the first 5 years. It's going to have, and your cash flow, I should say, because hopefully your lease up is going to take less than 3 years. And then it's going to have your operations budget, your pricing model, your 10-year return on investment and pro forma, and then hopefully your consultant will do a sensitivity analysis to test, like, what happens if interest rates move against you, what happens if you don't achieve the occupancy levels and your lease up is longer, like test different variables. So
okay. So to recap, you do phase 1, takes about a week, anywhere between $3,600 and $7,500. And if
between 2,500 and I said 60, I think 6,500.
6,500. Okay. Okay. So you start with that. If for some reason can't do what you probably want, what you want to do, back out of the contract, move out, move
right.
on to the next deal.
Right.
If you can, you're moving on to phase 2.
Right. And so
how many phases? Just 2?
Just 2. So that is generally between about 6,800 and 10,000. That generally takes me 2 weeks. I know it only takes a lot of people 1 week. But like, I do a SWOT analysis, the strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. I just do a lot of stuff that probably other people may not do. But and then I was going to say that at that point, when you have, if you're doing that, if you're trying to move your project along quickly, and you're doing your engineering work and you're doing your feasibility study, and you get both of those done, then you can go get bids for your project, and then you can, while you're getting bids, you can write your business plan, and then you can apply for your loan. So you got to keep it moving, like.
Right, and to be clear, you're only giving us the client. Excuse me. You're only giving the client an underwriting of what the expectation of the facility to produce income is. You are not getting into the nitty-gritty of the build cost. You'll give them an estimated range that you believe it should land in. And if you land in this range, then you should get X, but you need to go out and find the suppliers. You need to go out and do all that fun stuff.
Exactly. So it is the basis of your business plan. But since I'm the first person in your, or usually, some people get all the way to the end and then the bank wants a feasibility study and they already have their construction costs. But then, then I'm just essentially saying, if I think the market will support what you want to do, and I'll still tell you, like, this is another way this could be more profitable, or the market doesn't want this, but, you know. So yeah, so I use the numbers from TrackD and Mako Rabco. And if you guys want to put it in the show notes, TrackD's basic investment calculator, that's a free calculator. They update it with construction prices, like for non-climate control, climate control, multi-story, and fully enclosed boat and RV. And then you could, if you want canopy boat and RV, or I can just tell you what I use, the numbers I use right now. For canopy, I use $50 a square foot for everything but the land. Right now, that's just what I'm using right now. Okay, that can change. And for gravel uncovered parking, I would use $6 and per square foot, and for pavement, I would use 11. And that, obviously that's way subject to change, but if you use that calculator, it will walk you through costing out your development, and it will have their updated construction prices.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's an unknown that a lot of people don't know. There's a lot of generalizations. Inflation's out of control. We're not going to get into politics, but it is what it is. Some days metal prices are down, some days they're out of control. So guys, make sure you spend time. And we've had a few building providers on here, but there's a lot of them out there. I want to ask you, and you brought it up before we ask you your success rate on your feasibility studies, because I am curious. I do want to ask about square foot per person and the importance of, because that's one of the factors inside this feasibility study is how much can the market support a new facility or an expansion of a facility. How important do you find the square foot per person metric that everybody uses, right? Isn't it sub 8, sub 7? They say, go ahead, build. You don't have to think about it. Over that, you better really think about it. What's your thought process on that?
Oh, that's so controversial, Ian.
Yes, let's do it. Get us on the front page.
So they are the industry's favorite metrics, and they are also the industry's least important metrics. So obviously I look at them when I do preliminary reports for people. I always put what that currently is, because it's just like a good benchmark. That would just be like saying, if people's incomes are $100,000, you should build, but if they're $40,000, you shouldn't build, right? Like that doesn't matter. So the average right now, if you are using the Self-Storage Almanac, the average nationwide is 6.2. If you're using Yardi Matrix, it's 7.1. But that is just the average across the whole country, right? So I might do a study where I did a study in Louisiana where there was only 3 square feet per capita. And I said, do not build, okay? But then I did a study in Orlando where there was 22 square feet per capita. 70,000 square foot facility had just come online 3 months beforehand, before I did the study. It was already almost full in 3 months, and it was 70,000 square feet. And I said, still build, right? Okay. So if I was just looking at that number, I wouldn't have made either of those recommendations. They would have been opposite, right? So what is more important than that number is, are rental rates increasing over time? And we know that during the pandemic, they increased in a crazy way, and now they've started to normalize, right? But you still want to look at that. Are the facilities overall, is their occupancy overall high? And then you want to know, what are prices like? Are prices high? So right now, because as you were saying, interest rates are high. If you were developing with an 8% interest rate and the prices are low, it's going to be very difficult for you to make money on your project. So you need to have prices that will support your development. And in addition to all of that, you need to make sure that either you or your feasibility consultant is looking at what is going on in the market, right? Like, is it a one industry town like here in Nebraska, I was going to build in a market that the primary industry was the railroad. And I don't know if you guys know anything about railroads, but they're just trying to automate everything, right? So
Right.
that town's entire economy is the railroad. And they keep cutting jobs, cutting 200 jobs, 200 jobs, 200 jobs. I was like, this is too risky. The town wasn't doing anything. I talked to the Chamber of Commerce, the Department of Economic Development. They weren't doing anything to bring in new industry. I was like, too scary. I'm not building there. So you need to look and see like what else is going on in that area. If like when you're looking for a market, you want to be looking for areas like you can look on the St. Louis FRED, FRED. I don't remember what it stands for. It's like a government acronym, but that shows all housing starts in the country. So you could look in like Baltimore and you could say, okay, where are all the housing starts around Baltimore? And then that could help you like narrow down where you want to look for land. And then, you know, you can use that as a way to start your process. So back to your original question, that was a super run-on answer.
No, it's perfect.
They're only mildly important. They're not unimportant, but they're not going to give you your final.
Yeah, I felt like a lot of people got like they get so caught up in it, and it's like this is the metric, and I got to find it, and it's like we all know it's like we could all stop buying today because we're afraid of interest rates, but the stuff we buy today is just really going into our portfolio to balance it all out. And I think you hit a lot of key points, knowing are you in a decaying city? And I think there's probably cases to be had that like, hey, you could buy facilities in decaying areas, knowing what's going to happen there. You just need to be aware to what's going on and, you know, spending time. And I think that's the big difference. You know, a lot of people ask us, what was the difference between single family and commercial? And I would say that commercial, there's a lot more due diligence that you feel like you put into a marketplace, understanding median household incomes, economic development, all those different things. Whereas housing market just kind of gets this like, all right, well, it's been there. It's going to be there. It should be worth some more later, you know? And I think a lot of people get lazy with it, where in this space, you got to be a little more willing to uncover the dirt, right? And go in and dig around and find out. So
for sure.
All right. So we're in the phase 2. We've done a complete study. At the end of this complete study, you now have all the financial returns. You have estimation. Oh, one other thing you brought up about that, you said 3-year stabilization is kind of the market industry. You guys think still 3% per month is the market trend to stabilize a facility, and that's not changing anytime soon?
Well, I think, yeah. So what you want to do is you want to develop, depending on the size of the facility you're developing, like minimum, you would want it to be able to stabilize in 2 years. But like I'm going to recommend the amount of storage that I think the market can absorb in 3 years. Unless it's a small facility. Like if it's a 24,000 square foot facility, I want that to be absorbed in 2 years or less, or I'm going to recommend that they build less. So it would be, I mean, that's when you want to be able to phase. And, you know, it is difficult to phase multi-story unless you're doing a conversion. But, you know, nobody ever said, I wish I had saved money on construction and just let my lease up be 5 years. Like, so.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think phasing in is important, and you see that a lot. And I think that's some of the advantage to new development, right? You buy, like we bought an existing 100,000 square foot site. Well, I got to go flush all the trash out of it. Now I'm stuck with 100,000 square feet that I got to stabilize. And I'm still trying to do it in those same metrics that you're doing. It can be an uphill battle as you're flushing people down the toilet. Whereas you're starting with a fresh start, build 20, it works, go build another 20 or whatever the numbers are that you suggest. And I think that's a competitive advantage that I see in the new development space. And I'd be curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think many self-storage fortunes were built that way. where they just built, they phased and they phased and they phased. But also in markets where you can build multi-story and lease it up in 3 years, like that's also a huge home run, and you're going to create so much more value doing that than you can in acquisitions. But it takes deeper pockets to do something like that too, because you're going to have such a much longer build up in a market like that. It's going to take you so long to get through entitlements and.
What I was going to ask you about that, like, do you think new development is more predictable than buying an existing trying to renovate? Or do you think buying something and stable an existing is a better business plan than trying to build new? What's your thought process on that?
Oh, well, it's riskier. Development is riskier, and that's why there's a higher reward. So
Yep.
it will always be riskier, because acquiring an asset that's established is always safer. But that's why the return is less, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense. It's funny, just guys, so you frame a reference. I remember one of the first times I met Catherine, we were eating lunch at a conference together, and she's like, I just want to be like you guys. And I'm like, you've built all these facilities. Like, you're insane. Like, what? You want to be like me? I want to be like you. And we had a lot of good exchanges about that, just because, it's like, it's probably the same way I look at you. You look at me, the grass is greener on the other side. Oh, if I could just buy existing, it'd be so much easier. I don't have to go through all these headaches, where I'm like, man, if I could just build something new, there'd be a bigger equity pop and it's more predictable. So that's why I asked you that question. So
yeah.
What, just real quick, so we don't leave this out, and you brought it up, and it's been a hot topic on our show recently. We've interviewed a few people. The conversion into small bay flex and that type of space, and doing feasibility studies on that. What's the big difference between flex and storage, or is there none, and you're looking at the same demographics?
Oh yeah, there definitely is, because for flex space, first of all, it's going to be a different type of space, and they might have different needs depending on what you want to build. So if a lot of those flex spaces do have a retail component, like, if it's a ballet studio, or if it's a gym or a karate studio, right, they're going to have customers. So that may not just fit into a storage facility, and they're going to want their own signage and some kind of visibility and stuff. Or if you're just building flex warehouse, that's going to appeal to contractors. That's why flex warehouse is also called contractor bays or contractor garages, depending on, are you going to let those businesses, it really is depending on what you want to build. Like, do you want something where the people are just going to store their equipment there, like a storage facility, and maybe there's drains in the floor, but that's it? Or are you going to let them actually work there, and there's a bathroom there, and it's roughed out for like a kitchen or an office, and you'll possibly complete that and build the inside for them and build that into their lease? So yeah, that is different than storage, and it's in some ways it's a different audience, and in other ways it's not. So I still look to the 2023 self-storage demand study, and I look at the business section of that. Anybody can go buy that from Mini Storage Messenger or whatever it's called now. It's like $200. It's very helpful. If you're in storage, you should buy it. And or is it $300? Anyways,
yeah.
But
it's more than it used to be. I promise you that.
It's more than it used to be. And that only comes out every 3 years, but that does segment the business data into, like, what size of units businesses prefer, how long they rent, how many units they rent, that type of thing. So then you're just looking at that data to say, okay, we know these self-storage customers that are businesses, these are their habits, and this is what attracts them. And that can apply to flex warehouse. But otherwise, you're looking for the demographic, I guess you would say, information about the businesses in the area, what types of businesses they are, how close the land is to major traffic corridors. Because, like, For example, I'm doing one right now in Texas, north of Dallas, and it is pretty close to the interstate, and so you can see that there's so much development on that side of town that contractors will come from both ways, and it's close to an interstate, you know. So there's a lot of factors like that that are the same for storage, but it's a different audience, you know.
Yep. No, that makes sense. I mean, it's been a hot topic, and a lot of that has been feel on my end of looking at some property, because it's been interesting. I feel like small bay flex is like the best part of storage and the best part of like long-term whole, commercial space, right? Like you're getting a longer term tenant. But then you got this metal box that they're renting. So it's like the best of both worlds.
For sure.
So I'm excited to see that journey, and I'm probably going to hit you up for some feasibility studies here on that. What, before Jason beats you up on some fun questions, I did say I'd ask you. Yeah, I did say I would ask you, what has your success, do you follow up your success rate of your feasibility studies to execution? Stuff that hasn't executed, has it been operator issues or market issues?
Well, sure. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. So I would say one thing that makes me different from other consultants is that I will do preliminary reports for my clients. So I will do your first preliminary report free, and I do that as a way to meet new clients, and then successive reports for $100. And so that is just a quick look at the market, and I use Radius. It's not anything you couldn't do yourself, but you also get my opinion, So I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, here's what I see as the pros and cons to this market. Here's some other things that you should explore before you do a study. And just like with any business, right? Like my business is a funnel. And if you picture like the top of the funnel is the whole free world who wants to build storage. And the bottom is the less than 1% whoever gets their project built. So I might do whatever, 1,000 preliminary reports in a year, and maybe 100 or 150 studies max in a year. And of those, how many get built? I would guess probably like maybe 20%. So of those that have gotten built, knock on wood, so far, all of them have exceeded my lease up projections. I have not followed up to see how their return on investment is. People are generally telling me more how their lease up is than how much money they're making. But I assume if their lease up is exceeding expectations, that they're happy. But I do think that if you do your preliminary research and your feasibility study, and you just stay on top of your research, and you need to be able to walk away if you find out that you're in a market where it's undersupplied by 150,000 square feet, and Extra Space, after you're 6 months down the path, is building a 150,000 square foot facility real close to you, you might reevaluate your project, right? And you also want to think about, I lost my train of thought. Oh, I don't remember. But
real quick, while on this subject, because now I'm curious. So what percentage of phase ones go to phase twos? And how many of those? I know you start with like a free report.
It just is so. That is like on the, when I put one thing I wanted your audience to know is, the best way to build a storage facility is to build a freaking storage facility.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's like 1%. People, everybody wants to build a storage facility, and it is not that hard. I've done it twice, and I'm a full-time mom, and I'm a full-time business owner, and whatever. It's just like, how many excuses do you have? You have to keep going. Yeah. And I know what I was going to say before. If you don't feel good about your project, and you feel like your feasibility consultant just gave you a yes because they just give yeses, then have another report done. Like, you know, like if you're thinking about sinking $2 million into something and you're worried about spending $3,600, well, you shouldn't do it. Like, be done. But if you can just keep going, just putting one foot in front of the other, you're going to have this great asset. But you just got to keep going. I mean, so many people give up. They just never keep going.
Well, I think that was probably some of the best advice that we've gotten on this show related to developing self-storage. We've obviously interviewed self-storage operators, and you know, Ian's got a wealth of knowledge on self-storage, but not many interviews related to the development side. So I thank you for that, because that was super helpful. One thing that Ian and I like to ask our guests is a favorite book, favorite podcast, ideally something current that you read that you really enjoy that potentially you could share with the group.
So many. I probably read like 2 books a week, and I listen to a million podcasts. So I listen to all the storage podcasts. Like my favorite, do you want my favorite storage podcast or my favorite non-storage podcast? So
let them rip right here.
Yep. Of course, I love the Real Estate Reserve podcast. And in addition to that, I also love Frank Rolfe's podcast because it's only 10 minutes usually. I like that he's super opinionated, and I like that I don't always agree with him, but I like that he gives like short, if people just followed his advice, they would just have fabulous facilities, you know, and I really appreciate that. And then favorite book, like I'm sure everybody says the Gap and the Gain, but I do love the Gap and the Gain. I love Vivid Vision. I just went to Tony Robbins for 5 days to unleash the power within. I'm unleashing my power. Woo! I'm unleashing it.
There you go. Yeah. No, they're all. It's all good things.
Yeah. I mean, the hardest thing too about being a developer and a business owner is that you just really have to focus on what information you're taking into your brain. Like, you know, yes, is it more hard to develop deals now? Absolutely. Do interest rates suck? Yeah, for sure they do. But at the end of this time, I will definitely have another facility built, and I'll be so far ahead from the people who didn't do it. So
yeah. Well, here's the other thing. If you can build it today in this fucked up environment, excuse my French, there's a lady on the show, in this messed up environment, that if the environment gets better, you'll be tenfold ahead of everybody else. Everybody else is going to be playing catch up. So it is an exciting time to get in. Now is the time, because if you can make it work today, when it's easier, it's going to be really easy to do deals. And when it's harder, you'll be the only one doing deals while everyone else is sitting on the sidelines, because that's what's happening right now. We've been talking to a few people about looking at our facilities, selling some assets, and everyone's like, nobody's buying, pent-up demand. I'm like, okay, well, they know where to come find me, because there is pent-up demand. These guys do want to spend money. They're ready to get out there and do it. And we're still buying and aggregating to meet their demand as it comes up. So I think it's an exciting time. I
agree.
Guys, listen, the best thing you can do for us, you know, Katherine has come out here and poured her guts out. Every time I hear her speak, I get so excited. And she hosts stuff at ISS. She speaks, you know, at some events. If you get a chance to see her, she's always very, very informative and detail oriented. So please share if you can, because that's the best that you can do for us. We don't ask for anything else other than that, because these are real people doing real deals. Katherine, where's the best place for people to find you on the internet if they want to get a hold of you for a feasibility study, or they just want to say hi, because not enough people just say hi anymore?
Sure. Well, my website is selfstorageninjas.com, and ninjas is plural. And if you fill out my form, if you have a parcel of land or a submarket you want me to look at, I'll do your first preliminary report free, like I said. Or if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm at Sensei Katherine. And I'll be, this year at ISS, I'm leading a panel on 2024 construction costs. And I know that I remember the first time I met Ian, and Ian told me, I just go to ISS and hang out with the vendors. I don't want to go to all those seminars. And I'm like, oh, go to the seminars.
I did the seminars. I did the seminars one time, and actually, one of the ones I walked in was probably one of the best that I heard from. It was 10 Federal, Storage
Brad
King,
Minsley. He's a
and
genius.
what's his name from Lancaster? Storage Freedom. No, what's his name? Mooney. They were talking about software and technology stack and dynamic pricing modules and all the technology stacks that they're coming up with and how to automate facilities. I was mind blown. And maybe that's why I don't go to that section anymore, because people are way smarter than me. And I just want to hang out with the boys. So,
that's not true.
hey, you'll find her at the Circle Bar, hanging out with the boys, keeping up, egging it on. So it's always a good time. So, Catherine, we appreciate you. Thank you for being our best friend from Nebraska, and look forward to seeing you at ISS here coming up soon.
Thank you for having me. It was so fun.
Yep.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.